Hello, I'm Lauren with IndoorGardening.com, and today we're going to talk about the 10 most common succulent mistakes to avoid and their solutions. Succulents are often touted as easy care, low maintenance plants, very good for beginners, but they are a little tricky and there are some things that you have to learn, and there are lots of mistakes that you can make with succulents, and it's okay because they visually tell you exactly what's going on and you can determine from there exactly what you need to fix. They are fantastic beginner plants for this reason. So for today we have 10 of the most common succulent mistakes and their solutions for you. We're going to go over exactly what they're looking like and how they're doing and how you can fix it to make your succulent as happy as possible. The first succulent mistake we want to talk about is giving it too little light. When your succulent is getting too little light, it's going to exfoliate or stretch out and elongate. You're going to see more spacing between the leaves. It's not going to be all small and compact and clumped together. You just have to give your succulent more light so it doesn't have to be reaching for that light. You can move it to a brighter window. You can get a grow light and put it kind of closer nearby. There are lots of different ways to fix this and prevent it from happening. Unfortunately, there is no way to shrink your succulent back down and stop it from stretching out. You can prevent it from stretching out more, but you cannot repair the damage that's already done, unfortunately. So the only way to get it looking good and normal again is to go ahead and propagate it, which is perfectly fine. It doesn't harm the plant. You're going to get a lot more plants out of it. It's just slightly annoying because it's something simple that can be avoided if we just give it enough light from the get-go. But it's also a mistake that every single succulent owner has made. The next mistake that almost everybody has made is overwatering. Almost everybody has overwatered their succulents. Succulents are very difficult to tell when to water. You start to see leaves shriveling up and you're like, oh no, maybe my succulent is dying. But that is not always the case. Most of the time when your succulent needs water, you're going to feel the leaves, especially the top ones or the ones right around the base that are very thick and plump. Those ones you want to feel if there's any give. If they start to feel a little squishy, then you want to go ahead and water it. There are lots of different ways to prevent overwatering. Just paying attention to your succulents' cues and when they need water will be a huge step to that. Also, having terracotta pots that wick away moisture, that's going to help as well, so that way they're not sitting in some type of a plastic pot making lots of humidity and containing a lot of moisture. You can also prevent overwatering by having a really good well-draining soil mix. Speaking of soil mix, that is the next mistake that is commonly made. The soil mix is too water retentive, meaning somebody took straight potting mix, straight houseplant mix, potted their succulent up in it. Generally, you're potting it in some cute ceramic pot that's going to hold in all that moisture, and basically your poor succulent is going to be sitting in a giant bog mix. It's straight from a bog. It's meant to hold on to a lot of moisture. They break it up with perlite or bark a little bit depending on the mix, but none of that is enough to make it well draining enough for succulents who prefer deserts or South African very well draining mixes. They don't want to be sitting in a bog. They want to be able to breathe. They want to be able to dry out. They are able to hold on to a lot of water. So when they're holding on to more water or they're sitting in water, they tend to rot, unfortunately. Like we talked about before, you just got to make sure that you're not using the straight potting mix and that you're breaking it up with other things like sand and perlite, rocks, those sort of things. The next common houseplant mistake on the list is underwatering. There is a common myth out there that succulents and cacti do not need water ever. You can just put them in a pot, set them on a windowsill, and leave them. Water them once every 6 months to a year. This is not true. Succulents actually need quite a bit of water, especially if they're drying out quite a bit, they're getting all their needs met, like a lot of sunlight, they're able to grow properly, they're using that moisture that they're retaining in order to sustain themselves and push out new growth. Depending on your conditions, you are going to have to water your plant more often than not. For example, if you're in hot, sunny, beautiful California and you have your succulents on your porch, you're probably watering them every day, every other day, especially if they're in terracotta pots where it's very warm and wicking away that moisture very quickly. If you have them inside where it's a bit darker, they're not getting as much light, it's wintertime, things are cooler, then you're not going to have to water your succulent as much. So it really just depends on your specific conditions, but regardless of the conditions, your plant is going to need water. You should be feeling the leaves, testing the leaves, paying attention to their growth patterns, and watering accordingly. The next common succulent mistake we see all the time is acclimating plants. A lot of times you'll end up seeing little burn spots on your succulents, you'll see little divots in your succulents, you'll see brown tips, you'll see a lot of leaves curling up or falling off and drying out. You'll see a lot of burning. This is what happens when you don't slowly acclimate your plant. We do have a whole video on acclimating plants if you're curious on how to do that, but basically you just want to slowly transition your succulent from one extreme to another. You don't want to just take that succulent from a dark area and put it directly outside in bright light, because then you're going to end up with a lot of burning on your leaves. The same is also true if you remove your succulent from bright light where it's getting a lot of really good light and you put it in a dark corner of your home, or even just a halfway dark point in your home. It's going to be a lot less light and a lot less resources for your plant. So you want to make sure that you slowly adjust. Another common mistake that we see is mixing succulents with different needs altogether. So some succulents are going to need a lot more water than others. Some are going to handle bright direct light and some are not going to handle direct bright light. Succulents just means a thick-leaved plant, usually associated with a plant that likes to dry out quite a bit, but they're still going to be from different areas, handling different temperatures. They're going to need different soil mixes and just different needs in general, which is why it's very important for you to take a look and see what your plants need. For example, an aloe is going to need water a lot more often than an echeveria, and even a haworthia is going to be able to withstand a lot more drought than an echeveria or an aloe. So it just really depends on what you have going on. Some are going to need more water and going to rot more easily than others. Definitely pay attention to everything that's in there and pull out what's not going to work with the rest. This next mistake is something that happens all the time. Most people don't even realize they're doing it, or that it's a bad thing, that it's going to hurt their plants at all. Watering immediately after repotting. With just about every other type of plant, this is a fantastic thing to do and it's going to help your plant. But with succulents, just like with the propagations for their leaves, you don't want to water them. You want to let them dry out. So just let it sit for a couple days to a week after you repot it. Just let it kind of recoup and regrow and heal itself up, callus over any damaged areas. Then you can go ahead and water it. This one tends to go unnoticed as well. Because succulents are left alone for so long, they end up being forgotten about. They're not watered every single day or checked on every day. Nobody's looking for new leaves every single day because they're slower growers. So what happens is pests will move in, they'll get in the cracks and crevices of these succulents, and they will overtake the plant. So proper precautions, paying attention, checking every once in a while, not letting your succulents touch, these things are going to help prevent pests from taking over your entire succulent collection. This next mistake is not talked about very often. It's something that kind of goes unnoticed. It's something that most succulent experts already know, but they don't think to mention to newer plant parents. Getting spots on your leaves. They'll just be brown spots, brown divots, damaged areas. A lot of times plant parents will think that maybe they bumped it, maybe there's a pest. But what's usually happening with that is water got on the leaves, especially if it's some sort of a fuzzy succulent like a kalanchoe, for example. Those spots are where the water has landed on your succulent leaves and the sun shone through it, and it sat there and it was so bright that it actually damaged and burned your plant. That's what happened there. So if you're watering your succulents, just pull them back to a shaded area until some of that water can dry off. You don't want to rub all the protection off the leaves like we mentioned before, but you definitely want to make sure that they're not going to be soaking wet and having a lot of bright light directly shining on them, because that can damage them, especially if it's a very strong afternoon light. A lack of growth in your succulents. Your succulents are not growing. It's been months. You have no no idea why. A lot of times what's going on is they are not receiving enough light. They need more light than they're getting. So that's what's going on there. You just have to move them to a brighter location, and generally you start to see new growth. If the new growth is deformed, then you want to make sure that you are giving them some type of fertilizer. They generally don't need much, and just a standard fertilizer will be perfectly fine for your succulents, but this lack of growth can also stem from not enough fertilizer, lack of water. A lot of the other common mistakes that we talked about here can lead to no growth for a succulent. Namely, light, though, is the biggest one. Give it more light and then experiment from there. Be sure to check out indoorgardening.com for more information. We're always happy to help. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye!